Hello, everyone. Today, I am going to tell you an incredible story. It is about a man who started from nothing, faced rejection and failure, but still managed to change the entire world. His name is Steve Jobs. If you have ever used an iPhone, a MacBook, or even just admired how beautifully designed a product can be, then you have already experienced his legacy. But Steve Jobs was not born into success. He was not handed anything easily on a silver plate. His life was full of ups and downs, triumphs and heartbreaks, yet he never gave up. This story is more than just a biography. It is a lesson in resilience, creativity, and never-ending hope. By the end of this, you will feel inspired to chase your dreams, no matter how big or impossible they seem. So let's dive into the story of Steve Jobs, the man who proved that crazy ideas can change the world. Steve Jobs was born on February 24, 1955 in San Francisco, California. But from the very start, his life was full of challenges. His biological parents, Joanne Schiebel and Abdul Fattah Jandali, were young and not ready to raise a child. They decided to give him up for adoption. Imagine this, Steve didn't even get to grow up with his birth parents. He didn't know who they were or why they gave him away. Yet this difficult beginning didn't stop him from becoming one of the most influential people in history. Steve was adopted by Paul and Clara Jobs, a humble couple who lived in Mountain View, California. Paul was a mechanic who loved working with tools, and Clara was an accountant. They weren't rich, but they gave Steve a home filled with love and care. From a young age, Steve was different. He wasn't like the other kids in his neighborhood. While other kids were busy playing outside, Steve was busy asking questions. How does this machine work? Why does this toy move like that? What would happen if I took this apart? Steve's father, Paul, noticed this curiosity and decided to teach him how to build things. Together, they spent hours in their garage fixing cars, radios, and even small gadgets. Paul told Steve something that stuck with him forever. If you're going to build something, make sure it's the best it can be. Pay attention to every detail. This advice became the foundation of Steve's future success. Steve was smart, no doubt about it, but he wasn't a perfect student. In fact, he was quite the opposite. He was bored in school because he found the lessons too easy. One teacher said Steve was so smart that regular school couldn't keep up with him. He needed something more challenging. But Steve wasn't just smart, he was also mischievous. He loved playing pranks on his teachers and classmates. Once, he even set off a small explosive prank at school. While most kids his age were just trying to pass their exams, Steve was already thinking outside the box. At the age of 10, Steve's family moved to Los Altos, California, which was a very special place. It was the heart of Silicon Valley, a place where technology was booming. One day, Steve saw a computer for the first time. It wasn't like the laptops or desktops we use today. This computer was massive, almost the size of a room. But Steve was fascinated. He thought to himself, "This machine can solve problems. What else can it do?" That moment sparked a fire in Steve's heart. He wanted to learn everything about computers and technology. As Steve grew older, his curiosity turned to passion. In high school, he met a man who would change his life. Steve Wozniak, or Woz, was a genius when it came to electronics. He could build amazing gadgets from scratch. The two Steves quickly became best friends, bonding over their love for technology. One of their first inventions together was a device called the Blue Box, which allowed people to make free long-distance phone calls. It was illegal, but it showed how creative and bold they were. Steve later said, "Without the Blue Box, there would be no Apple." In 1974, Steve went on a journey to India. He was searching for something deeper, something beyond money or success. In India, Steve learned about spirituality and the importance of focus. He learned how to think deeply, how to stay calm under pressure, and how to keep his mind sharp. When he returned to the United States, Steve wasn't just a young man anymore. He was a man with a vision. He wanted to create something that would change the world. At the age of 21, Steve and Steve Wozniak started their first company. But they didn't have a fancy office or a big budget. They worked out of a small garage in Steve's parents' house. They named the company Apple. Why Apple? Because Steve loved the simplicity and freshness of the fruit. He wanted his company to feel the same way, simple, fresh, and creative. Their first product was the Apple I, a small computer that they built with their own hands. It wasn't perfect, but it was the beginning of something extraordinary. Steve and Wozniak worked very hard on their first product, the Apple I. It was not just a machine, it was a vision of what technology could do for people. They started selling the Apple I to small computer shops and people who loved electronics. It was not a huge success, but it earned them enough money to think bigger. Steve was not satisfied yet. He believed that the future was not just for tech experts, it was for everyone. His dream was to create a computer so simple and beautiful that anyone, even a child, could use it. This led to the creation of their next product, the Apple II. The Apple II was revolutionary. It was one of the first personal computers that came with color graphics and was ready to use straight out of the box. It became a massive success, making Apple a multi-million-dollar company almost overnight. Steve, at just 23 years old, became a millionaire. But Steve was not excited about the money. What truly drove him was his dream to change the world. Steve was not an easy person to work with. He demanded excellence in everything. If something was not perfect, he would push his team to start over. People said he was difficult, but Steve believed in one thing. If you want to create something truly great, you cannot settle for good enough. For Steve, every small detail mattered, whether it was the design of a computer or the way the company logo looked. He wanted it to be perfect. He once said, "When you look at a product, you shouldn't just see how it works, you should feel it. It should inspire you." This obsession with quality made Apple products stand out. By the early 1980s, Steve had a new vision. He wanted to create a computer that was not just functional, but also beautiful, friendly, and easy to use. This dream became the Macintosh, or the Mac. The Macintosh was not just a product, it was an experience. It introduced things we use today, like the mouse and the graphical user interface, the idea of clicking icons instead of typing difficult commands. Steve believed that technology should be human-centered. He said, "Computers are not about technology. They are about helping people unlock their creativity." The Macintosh launched in 1984, and Steve made sure it had a dramatic introduction. He hired a famous director to create an ad called 1984, which aired during the Super Bowl. It showed Apple as a company that would break all barriers and free people from boring traditional technology. But success was not always smooth. Despite his brilliance, Steve's personality created conflicts. Many people in Apple thought he was too demanding, too stubborn, and too controlling. In 1985, a power struggle happened between Steve and Apple's board of directors. Shockingly, they decided to remove him from the company he had created. Imagine that, being fired from your own company. For Steve, this was devastating. He felt betrayed, humiliated, and lost. He later said, "Getting fired from Apple was the best thing that ever happened to me. It freed me to think creatively again." Instead of giving up, Steve used this setback as a chance to start over. He founded a new company called Next, which focused on creating advanced computers for education and businesses. Around the same time, Steve bought a small animation studio called Pixar. At first, Pixar struggled, but Steve believed in its potential. He worked with a team of talented artists and technicians who shared his vision. In 1995, Pixar released its first movie, Toy Story. It was the world's first fully computer-animated film, and it became an instant classic. While Steve was building Next and Pixar, Apple was struggling without his vision and leadership. The company had started to fail. By the mid-1990s, Apple was on the brink of bankruptcy. In 1997, Apple made a bold decision. They invited Steve Jobs back to the company. This was his moment of redemption. When Steve returned, Apple was in chaos. When Steve Jobs returned to Apple in 1997, he found the company in complete chaos. Products were not selling, the company was losing a lot of money, and people had lost their faith. But Steve was not scared. He had a clear plan. One of his first and most important decisions was to simplify everything. He canceled unnecessary projects and decided to focus on just a few products that could truly make a difference. In 1998, Steve introduced the iMac. It was a computer unlike anything people had ever seen before. It was colorful, simple, and fun. But it wasn't just about the looks, it was also fast and powerful. The iMac became a huge success and put Apple back on the map. It showed the world that Apple was no longer a failing company. Steve was back, and so was his magic. Steve made Apple focus on simplicity. Instead of creating dozens of different products, he asked, why don't we just focus on 4? He simplified everything: fewer products, fewer designs, and clearer goals. Then Steve did something very surprising. He partnered with Apple's biggest rival, Microsoft. Many people hated this idea, but Steve said that if Apple wanted to survive, they needed to be practical. The deal brought Apple much-needed cash and made people believe in the company again. By the late 1990s, Steve was ready to revolutionize Apple once more. His vision remained simple: create products that are beautiful, powerful, and easy to use. In 2001, Apple launched the iPod, a tiny device that could hold 1,000 songs in your pocket. This was a complete game-changer. Before the iPod, people carried bulky CDs or tapes, which were very inconvenient. But with the iPod, music became portable and personal. Steve didn't just sell a gadget, he sold an idea. He said, with the iPod, you can carry your entire music library everywhere you go. The iPod wasn't just about technology, it was about freedom, creativity, and joy. It became a cultural phenomenon, and millions of people fell in love with it. Steve was a unique leader. He didn't manage Apple like a regular CEO. He treated the company like an artist creating a masterpiece. He paid attention to every single detail: the colors, the fonts, the packaging, and even the way products felt in your hands. He believed that design and functionality should work together perfectly. Steve once said, "Design is not just what it looks like and feels like. Design is how it works." But Steve could also be very tough. He demanded excellence from his team. Sometimes he was blunt and impatient, but his passion pushed people to achieve the impossible. In 2007, Steve introduced the product that would change the world forever: the iPhone. The iPhone wasn't just a phone, it was a camera, a music player, and a computer all in one device. Before the iPhone, phones were clunky and hard to use. Steve wanted to create something so simple and intuitive that anyone could use it. He explained, the iPhone is a product of simplicity. It's the best phone, the best music player, and the best internet communicator. We are putting all of this in your pocket. The iPhone was an instant success. People loved its sleek design and its touchscreen. It wasn't just a product, it became a part of people's everyday lives. Steve didn't just create products, he created a new way of thinking. He believed technology should empower people to dream bigger and express themselves. He once said, technology is at its best when it becomes invisible. When you don't even think about the device you're using, that's when magic happens. In 2008, Steve launched the App Store. This idea changed how people used technology forever. Before the App Store, phones were limited to basic functions like calling and texting. But with apps, people could play games, learn new skills, and connect with others worldwide. Steve didn't just build a product, he built an ecosystem where creativity could thrive. While Steve was changing the world, he was also fighting a very difficult personal battle. In 2003, he was diagnosed with a rare form of pancreatic cancer. At first, Steve did not choose the usual medical treatments. He tried alternative ways, believing he could heal naturally. But as time passed, his health got worse. Eventually, he had surgery and returned to work. Even during his illness, Steve never stopped innovating. He said, "I want to put a dent in the universe before I go." In 2010, Steve introduced the iPad, a device bigger than a phone but smaller than a laptop. People were skeptical at first, but Steve believed it could create a new category of devices. Once again, he proved the critics wrong, and the iPad became another massive success. By 2010, Steve Jobs had become more than just a CEO. He was a global icon of innovation and determination. However, behind the scenes, his health was deteriorating. The battle with pancreatic cancer was catching up to him. Despite his illness, Steve refused to slow down. He often said, "You only get one life. Make it count." Every day he pushed himself to do his best work because he believed in living with purpose no matter how much time he had left. Under his leadership, Apple reached new heights. By 2011, it became one of the most valuable companies in the world. Apple wasn't just a company anymore, it was a lifestyle. Steve wanted everything to work together seamlessly in an ecosystem. For example, you could take a picture on your iPhone and see it on your Mac instantly. He believed technology should make life easier, not more complicated. While Steve was transforming the world, he also cherished his family. He was married to Lorene Powell Jobs, a strong woman who supported him through all his challenges. Together they had 3 children, Reed, Aaron, and Eve. Steve also had a daughter, Lisa, from a previous relationship. He wasn't always a perfect father in his early years, but over time he worked hard to build a stronger relationship with his kids. He often told them, "Don't settle for anything less than what you love. Follow your passions." Despite his busy schedule, he made time for family dinners and simple moments like walking in the garden, reflecting on life. Even as his health worsened, Steve kept thinking about the future. He wanted Apple to remain innovative even after he was gone. He mentored his team and shared his ideas. One of his famous quotes was, "Innovation is saying no to 1,000 things." This meant focusing only on what truly mattered. In 2011, Apple introduced Siri, a virtual assistant that could understand spoken commands. This was another example of Steve's vision for the future, technology that felt natural and intuitive. In August 2011, Steve made the difficult decision to step down as CEO. He wrote a heartfelt letter saying that the day had come when he could no longer meet his duties. He chose Tim Cook as his successor, believing Tim shared his values. On October 5, 2011, Steve Jobs passed away at the age of 56. His death was a global loss. We must remember his 2005 speech at Stanford University, one of the most iconic speeches in history. He told 3 stories. The first was about connecting the dots. He explained how his calligraphy class, which seemed useless at first, helped him design beautiful fonts for the Mac years later. He said, "You can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backward." The second story was about love and loss, being fired from Apple only to find more creativity. He told the graduates, "Don't lose faith." The third story was about death. Facing his own mortality reminded him that time is precious. He said, "Your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life. Have the courage to follow your heart and intuition." Steve's legacy isn't just about technology, it's about the way he made people think. He taught us to challenge the ordinary, focus on quality, and stay hungry, stay foolish. These words remind us to keep learning and taking risks. Steve Jobs proved that one person with passion and determination can truly make a lasting impact on the world. His journey reminds us that it is never too late to dream big and make a difference. Our time is limited, but our potential is infinite. If you enjoyed this story and want to improve your English every day, Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new lesson. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next story.